Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here today with Andre Wiesner. Andre has extensive experience in technical training, has underseen many apprenticeship programs over the years for various organizations, and he brings a wealth of experience. And we're going to be exploring the concept of quality training and what that looks like, and formal apprenticeships versus informal, which is quite a strong, important distinction to make. When we travel up into Africa, we see a lot of informal apprenticeships where young people work on the tools but don't get recognition from their country or from their employers. And as a result, they can never, ever take their skills and work abroad or be recognized for their knowledge. We today are specifically talking about formal apprenticeships and what represents a great apprenticeship program. So, Andre, welcome.
Thank you.
It's really good to have you here. I've been trying to plan this for some time,
Yes.
but at last we're pulling it off. And I'd like to start by maybe walking through an apprenticeship program from the beginning through to when a young person qualifies in their respective trade. And we can touch on a number of different things. I think what'll be really cool is if we can maybe start right from the outset, recruitment, how you recruit talent, because I'd like young people as well to understand what it takes to get into an apprenticeship, because people are desperate for jobs and for training. And then also, the one I'd like to explore some of these concepts, what we look for, how young people should prepare for that process, and then what they would experience as we go through a quality apprenticeship. So if I can hand it over to you, as somebody who I consider an expert in this space, and maybe walk me through the process from your perspective.
Hi, Sean. Thank you for the opportunity.
Great.
So, first of all, if we can start off to say, I think, not think, but know that the recruitment process are very much important. And not only the recruitment process with regards to interviews and that, but also some form of psychometric assessment. As you correctly said, is people embark on anything to get a job. So am I really the right person to be this type of apprentice in a specific trade? And if you don't know about this, you're going to attach on anything and you go for that. And I think that, to me, it's the crutch of the whole process of to say, when we do recruitment, good interview, good interviewers, and then obviously part of that, it must be a good psychometric assessment to determine what is like the career progress, what you can fall in. Otherwise, you're going to set up with a person or set for failure. And that's a good career guidance to tell somebody to say, you know what, I think according to the norm in the country, you will fit the best in a boilermaker or a fitter or whatever, and start of that.
Can I just
Yes.
ask a quick question? Sometimes when I speak to youngsters that are in training, and I say to them, why did you choose engineering training? And occasionally I get these young people saying to me, I need a job, I want a job. And I'm like, engineering training is so much more than just a job. And I know people need money and there's a lot of poverty. I understand the social challenges we have, but I hate hearing that response, because for me, being an artisan is so much more than just having a job. How do you try and filter that and find people that have a passion to work with their hands?
Well, normally what we do is we will ask you simple stuff in the sense of show me anything what you can do. Sometimes we give them a set of Lego blocks with a plan or a picture, and they say, build it to see what's the inside of that. Rightly what you said about, remember, you want a job maybe to provide for your families. But necessarily, it's not the right job you're going to get for that. Because people always, when I recruit some of them, they will tell me, what does an electrician earn? So is it about the earnings or about the job.
Mm.
So from experience side, I can tell you that you have to have a passion. And to me, if you want to become an artisan, you must be able to engineer something. You have to be able to make something. You must be able to look, and you don't have to be clever about that. It's about how you got to go about it to do that. And I think that's important to someone, because money is a short-term motivator, and tomorrow you want maybe 10 rand more. But to love your job, and that is sometimes where people miss out with regards to educational requirements versus what you want. So there's a lot of people wants to be just artisans. And I think starting from the recruitment process the right way, that to me is critical. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on that. And we ask people, how does a drilling machine work? Show us, or things like that. And it also depends from where out of South Africa do they come from. Because I can see there's a big difference out of, say, Gauteng area, and maybe in the more rural areas, because it's about that exposure, being brought up with some of the tools or things, and that's some of the challenges also what we experience. And the learning takes sometimes longer with regards to that. But I think recruitment must be the right way.
Yeah.
Your interviewers must ask the right questions. And don't try to ask any difficult questions, because the difficult things will come after they qualify, because that's when they start to learn.
Cool. And then, Andre, before we go into the next phase of training, once a person's been recruited and employed as an apprentice, can we just quickly touch on gender? People find gender very interesting, and what we're seeing is year on year, more and more women coming into the trades. What has been your experience of that phenomenon?
No, Sean, to me that I think it's important to bring in, because we know about women in the industry must come in. Also needs to have to be equal to everyone. But I think there's some of these tasks or apprenticeships, I don't want to say it's not fit for women, but if you look sometimes the size of equipment they work on, depending on what industry you're approaching, that could be some of a challenge as well.
Yeah.
And women to me is like more of a supervisory capacity, because it's mothers. It's like a mother. They sort out the household, things like that. And that's why sometimes maybe in a supervisory capacity, but as artisans and maybe good artisans, then the job can maybe get too heavy for them as well. Changing impeller on pumps, for example, or gears or things. So sometimes we experience that, where we see sometimes it's very difficult. And we also experience it in our industry, is where there's big motors and they have to be aligned. And then the ladies really, really struggle with those massive tools. So fitness also, medical fitness is important, things like that, so to ensure, because otherwise, again, back to where I came from, to say that's failures. Put up somebody qualified, that individual cannot do this or perform this task. Now you say, oh, you can't do your job, things like that. So that's very, but I see there's a lot of women coming into the industry with regards to artisans or apprenticeships.
Yeah, and I spent quite a bit of time doing research on this, and the men that I spoke to, because I collect a lot of data from men, because no one talks to the men, and I found that talking to the men, it gives you a broader picture of what's happening on the ground. And a lot of the men said the women were more mentally astute and picked up the concepts quicker than they could. So I found that interesting. And then some of the attributes that they attributed to women were more patience, working smarter with their bodies, so less inclined to get injured. And then when I talked to the instructors in the training centers, some of the fine motor skills, especially in the electrical trade, instrumentation,
electronics in that.
The women do quite well there, because they're good on those fine motor skills and neatness and that sort of thing. So those were some of the attributes. And then they also echoed what you're saying, where there needs to be a very careful, and it relates back to recruitment, where you got to look at a woman's physical stature, because
Yes.
you get very strong women.
You do.
Some women
You
can
No, you
do
do.
some of the heavy trades, but it's the exception. It's
Yes.
a small percentage. Likewise with men, you can also get weak men who can't
You're right.
who
No,
can't
definitely.
do some of those things and have to ask for
Yeah.
help. But that's also a small percentage.
Yeah.
So inversely, and then I guess what we have to do, and sorry, this isn't about my thoughts, but getting people to communicate and work in teams when they have to, I think is important. But there are certain trades. I think boilermaking is a tough one for women, pushing oxyacetylene
Yes.
bottles across a
Steel plates.
yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
You've got to be strong to do that.
Uneven surface that it's
Pulling cables in a
Yeah.
mining environment, pulling those electrical cables through the
Yeah.
shafts, it's heavy work. But nevertheless, I think it's really, really, really interesting. But it's good for women to understand coming in that they need to choose the right trade for them.
Yes.
And then also learn how to be assertive and communicate properly, because otherwise people take advantage of you. You know, if you're seen as vulnerable, you get taken advantage of.
You're right, and quite interesting. On some companies, there's a lot of females in the boilermaker trade, or the let me rather rephrase and say the mechanical trades as well. You know, so I think electrical is like absorbed. You know, there's so many in there. There's a few of them what take on instrumentation. So I don't know what's the reason why that, because they will do well there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Females, maybe auto electrical,
Yeah.
things like that. So, but I see that take up electrical not so much anymore, but mechanical trades they do take a lot of that. I don't know why, but we see that, we experience that.
Yeah.
In the sense of these apprentices.
Absolutely. Andre, okay, moving on. So the apprentice comes in, goes through the recruitment phase. If they're successful, they get appointed. What do you normally do from there? How do you prepare the learner for the journey?
Well, normally what they do is basically we give them an induction program to say what is their development plan look like going forward with certain objectives and criteria and that, and explain to them what do we expect from them. I think that's important because there must be a clear view, clear understanding, like agreement to understand, you know what? And it's also, it's you have to perform, you know, it's you are the performer, it's in your hand, it's self-paced. And what we experience, there's a lot of these apprentices will still think maybe they're still in school. You know, it's like a push the whole time. And this is not about a push, this is about pull as well. And you must bring your side. So once we take them through this whole process, obviously identify the training provider, tell them what's going to happen within their program, how does it going to work, be responsible, looking in the sense of what they need to do to make sure their logbook gets signed off, make sure there's good communication, that you give that whole accountability to them to say, and that's where you can start seeing, because once they become an artisan, they already have grasped some of these stuff to know, you know what, I'm the artisan now, I'm responsible for this section or this portion we have to work. It's my responsibility. And I think that's where we start. If that's not a good, let us call it the introduction into the real world now. If that's not done properly, then you're going to get maybe apprentices what fall behind because it's self-paced. Remember, you get a passive learners, you get those fast learners. So there's different type of people, but that's the type of thing you have. And also we expect to remember there's self-study, research. So it's not about just what you get. It's what you're going to do broader than that to make sure you understand your specific trade while you're studying.
And then as they move through that journey, you obviously, how do you ensure quality? Like, as if you're responsible for that group of apprentices, how do you drive quality through the entire process, from the institutional training, the on the job,
experiential?
What are the key things to look out for?
Sean, key to how we drive it, or how I drive it, is to ensure that from the beginning you have to have the right institutional training. You have to select the right training provider. There must be really really like a sense of approval to say, you know what, that specific learner, because remember, some of them get things what they never knew about. And you know the concept of 70% concept with regards to 30% institutional, 70% practical or experiential training. But the most important is how we drive it and to ensure you get the right training center with good reference, if I can say that, because there's a lot of these centers in South Africa, what is really a question mark, that, if I may say that. And you can get also a good center, but it's all about the facilitators or your training officers. That's really crucial. And with experience, and as what I said, is quality to me in the sense of that is operational and center, like a combination of this, the typical facilitator, because then you know that transfer of skills and knowledge from the theory portion to the practicals, a lot of things, a bit of theoretical, a lot of practical, we apply the knowledge. That is, and so you have to measure that. Monthly measurements, performance, to say, will the learner fall behind? What's happening there? Things like that. So that's very crucial to keep up with that. And I think good communication with regards to that, and be very strict on that, because you can't allow anybody to fall behind. If there's a reason for that, obviously then you have to but that's the minimum.
Yeah.
Things like that. Back at the workplace, we got a lot of systems in place. We're doing panel interviews, learner monthly meetings where learners come into a forum, sit down and present what they did for the month or two. And then there's a whole panel of coordinators, supervisors, foremen, measure that with the HRD teams and see what's the performance. And then they ask questions, because there's a thing what they call AI, and there's also a lot of YouTubes.
Yeah.
So, and we must tell them, keep away from that, because we want to see what you know, what you understand, and that's where the questions. Preferably, when the panel asks the questions during interviews, ensure we stay with the curriculum. Quality institutions, if there's something difficult, let them redo it. And I think quality performance appraisals, it's important to have that measurement the whole time. Good coaches, that's also a huge thing in the workplace. You have to have good coaches. And if I say good coaches, meaning that it's not those who take the shortcuts, those who work according to book. And then obviously, how do you support them? Coaching guides, learner guides, things like that, to make sure they understand the whole process. And also have that interview with your coach. And during these panel interviews, learner monthly meetings, what we have, then you can ask, you can cross-question, if I can say that, your coach and the learner while you're in this conversation. And most important, you have to have the type of equipment what it is in the curriculum, especially when it comes to experiential training. If not, go to the nearest, say for example, your diesel mechanics doing wheel balancing, and you can't go someplace to a company who does that. Get this service level agreement or memorandum of understanding. Let they take your learners there, take your apprentices there, and let they get trained on those stuff. But quality, crucial, and also let the learner or the apprentice evaluate the facilitator, because then you can start closing gaps, things like that. That's how I see quality in the sense of that.
Yeah.
Strict on the point. So there's a lot of forms, documents, and we know it's always a challenge, especially to complete that.
It sounds like you've built a lot of rigor into your whole process,
Yes.
so that by the time that learner qualifies, you know who the top performers are without a doubt.
Yeah,
coming out of the program. So let's say you have an apprentice complement of 30 or 50. By the end of that 3.5 or 4 years,
it's difficult then to choose one or two.
Yeah.
But that's what we say is, if you haven't got a rugged process by quality, because we want to avoid where at the end of that program, they tell the apprentice, you're not good enough. But now, with everything we have in place, we can say, but we gave you all the tools. So during the program, if you underperformed, we can remove you from the program. But the line management can't come back now and say, you know what, at the end of this journey, say, I don't want you because X, Y, and Z. And you say, no. You had all the tools. That's why when we do evaluation every 3 months, we even do closing the gap to measure the quality of training. We do workplace assessments. For example, on all the trades except millwrights, we do 8 assessments throughout that program, meaning that when you're in the workplace doing experiential training, we measure you there in that same workplace to see if you understand it. Trade readiness, meaning that we see if you can manage a section as an artisan. So we allow you 3 months or 6 months at the end of the period to perform that task. Then your artisan will be, or your coach will be like a ghost to see if you can really perform it. And during that time, we also give you some leadership skills. Because you're going to lead people. You're going to have people reporting maybe into you or your subordinates working with you as an artisan.
Yeah. How many years, in your opinion, does it take for a newly qualified artisan to really become great at their job or great in their trade? Let me rather phrase it like that.
You know, Sean, if I can say that, if you're a really smart apprentice and you start working from the beginning very hard and you ask a lot of questions and you say, please allow me to do this task, that's where you build up experience. So there's always saying, you know what, I always say that experience can't be fast tracked because it's sometimes in your life you passes some difficulties. That's when you start learning. I can remember from myself in the past is when I qualified, then I was like blind in the sense of what now? Nobody's with me. The first time I've done like standby. That was a challenge. But if you are a smart learner or an apprentice and you start learning from the day one, it will accelerate your time to say, you know what, normally we say after 2 years or 3 years, industry-wise, they normally talk about 3 years. Qualified in the same trade, you can become the coach to mean that you've been exposed, but it doesn't say that. And to me we know that apprenticeship could be, due to the legislation, could be in a short time to give in your submission of your experiential training. But I still say, if we still keep it on that 4-year program, what we did in the past, that allowed to obtain a lot of exposure in that sense. But once qualified, I'm sure everybody, when you start working by yourself on your own, nobody has support you, nobody holds your hand. Yeah. That's when you start to learn.
Yeah.
And you must ask, because a lot of artisans are introverts. What I experience, they talk to machines and that they normally don't ask questions. And that's very crucial. So when you qualified as an artisan, ask questions. There are quite a good balance of artisans in your sections. It's also a good thing to have, because we did analysis a long time ago when I worked with one of the employers. When we look at sections or portions in the business, you must have a balance of older artisans, quite experienced, say 10, 15, 20 years, with the young ones, because they will learn these young ones. Things like that.
Transfer that experience.
And it's not, and people say you can fast track experience. Never. Experience is what you gain through when you struggle to do something. That's when you learn.
Absolutely. I mean, you see it even with other qualifications. People coming out of university with a B degree. Yeah. If you've got no experience, it's difficult for you to add value. And you need experience to gain some sort of the ability to add value to a business. So I think it's the same with an apprenticeship. Yeah. You qualify, the difference is apprentices can add value immediately.
A lot.
Like within 2 years, I guess. But post-qualification, if they're on the tools for another 5 or 8 years, they become enormously valuable.
They do. They do.
So, while you're talking, Andre, I've been reflecting on the rigor that you've built into your apprenticeships and how much effort goes into developing a quality product or person at the end of it, well-rounded, lots of experience, all the basic understanding of the trade, that helps them walk around with pride, of their trade and what they do. And then you see so many young people opting to go a shortcut, going to a fly-by-night training center, spending 40,000 Rand, getting a red seal, and then trying to go and apply for jobs with that, taking all the shortcuts, not having the right knowledge or experience, and potentially putting people's lives at risk.
They do.
So, I mean, a formal apprenticeship with rigor, what would you estimate that costs, direct and indirect costs, to train one apprentice?
Well, Sean, depends on what is your pay structure look like. But you know what, training is not cheap, and maybe when you refer back to quality, it's about, I think about the 500,000 sometimes what you pay for good. But I just want to add on what you said about these training centers, fly-by-nights, is that we actually ask now for artisans what we employ. We actually screen them. And then we ask, can you show me a logbook, or where did you get trained up? Because of what you say is, you allow people to work for other people's lives. If you think about the Cable Mountain, the Cableway, when they do inspection there, who will you trust to do that? The reason for that is the basic understanding with regards to quality training and let us call it formal training, is where you teach people the basic fundamental stuff of how to mark, how to sharpen, how to read, interpret a drawing, the structural drawings what the boilermakers do. If you don't have that basic understanding, it's easy to weld. I also can weld. I think anybody can weld, maybe, or fix something quickly. But to fix it the right way, to ensure it will last for longer. I always got the saying to say, good artisans must have 100% to pass. A doctor only requires 50% to pass in university, and they must up on you. So fly-by-nights, really, as an organization, most big organizations look at that during the recruitment process of artisans to say, you know what, give me your POE or your portfolio of evidence. Have you got some form of contract, a logbook, so I can see it? So even though if you didn't follow the formal apprenticeship, but at least if you attend some of those phases or programs, say phase 4 or advanced, whatever, and you can jog it down and write it down. That's very crucial, because if you haven't got that, there's small things what they left behind with the basic fundamentals, and that's crucial. That's very much crucial to do that.
Andre, as we wrap up, are there any other thoughts around quality or around the apprenticeship program that you'd like to share?
You know what, Sean? Yes, of course. To me, it's how do they get funded? Because I think also that could also be some form of challenge as well. And how do we support training providers like government supported or private owned companies? I mean, I think we must work towards one set of goals or one set of rules to ensure what we train in a specific training center up in Gauteng. And it doesn't matter if it's privately owned or governmental owned, like the Center of Specialization. It must be exactly the same. I think from a whole perspective of government, business, whatever, we have to support all of them to ensure quality artisans in South Africa, because that's the economic. And to support them, I mean, that's a great initiative. And it's a costly, I mean, setting up a center is costly, but I think that's, to me, from a business perspective or from a quality perspective, to say, you know what we teach in A, we teach in B, C, D, and E. Exactly the same. And we stand for the same quality. And we know there is some programs going on currently in the country to accelerate some of this stuff. But if you do that, still ensure quality remain within that. If it's a short recognition of prior learning, whatever, ensure we follow the right process.
Yeah.
Determine the gap. If it's not there, tell them you have to do it. Otherwise, it mustn't only be about money, because a lot of people race for money now.
Yeah.
But it mustn't be like that.
Agreed.
Quality is higher than what it costs.
So that all the stakeholders have to drive quality,
Yes.
including government and the
Including
government institutions that
everyone.
exist. And I couldn't agree more. I think certainly when we look at different industry players, there's big variation
Yes.
in terms of what's going on the ground. And that doesn't serve anybody. It doesn't serve the youth. It doesn't serve the country, the economy, and our reputation. South Africa's generally, in my opinion, had a great reputation for producing quality artisans.
Yes.
They work all over the world.
Yes, I just want to say that now. Remember, there's also a saying where they say, we're only accepting now qualification up till that year to come and work in, say, Australia, New Zealand, wherever. Yeah. And it doesn't be like that. It must be open then. And maybe from our side as well is, if you follow the shortcut without proper quality, it's actually injustice to that apprentice or that individual. And it mustn't be, we can protect that.
Agreed.
But as you said, all stakeholders need to sit and as a bigger forum or whatever in the country and say, you know what, driving, learning and development in any qualification, this is the standard. The higher your skill sets go, the lesser the poverty becomes. The greater industry we can build, because then we got people who can drive that for us.
Agreed. Andre, in conclusion, if you were talking to a group of young people, what is the one piece of advice you would give them if they're considering going into engineering training?
Well, the biggest advice, or what I will give to them, is when you go in any form of trade, ensure that's the right trade you've been selected to go on and what you want to do, and focus on your development. Look out for quality, ask questions, go do analysis, go do research, and it's up to you to make the difference. We are only the supporting, but it's all about yourself, how you drive it. And I always tell it, if you learn, don't learn to pass, learn to remember, because you're going to need it maybe in 5 years' time as well.
Great advice. It's all around that attitude to learning. Sounds like you've nailed that, and I think that's sage advice. Thanks for that.
Pleasure.
Andre, appreciate you coming in and sitting with us. And I know you maybe going to be retiring in the next few years. I think it'll be a big loss to industry when you do hang up your boots or your gloves. But thanks for sharing your experience. I think the years that you've been doing what you're doing definitely showed through, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's from 1990, eh?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's a long walk.
Thanks. And you must be passionate, I think, Sean. You must take it to heart and things like that. And that's right what you say. It's a long journey across a lot of things, being involved with a lot of board meetings and of the regulators, if I can say that, yeah.
And you started on the tools, and now
yes, I've started on the
sitting
tools,
in government institutions, doing policy, helping drive policy and
procedures,
guides,
so, qualifications.
I mean, that's another great point to share with young people. You know, you don't have to stay on the tools.
No, not
go anywhere.
You must change your career in the sense of, they say, at least twice in your lifetime. You don't have to stick with what you have started, but if you change your passion, but at least that's where you come from. That's your roots, what you have to remember.
Thanks, Andre.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks, Sean.
Appreciate it.